evening and good evening, and it's indeed a pleasure to be here with you again. Pastor Sue, it's a pleasure to be here with our viewers one more time.
It certainly is, since it's a good evening and a good evening. It's two evenings and two goods together.
Wow, imagine that. But it was so good for last week and this week.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And last week we had a really, really good time with Professor Pedro Welch.
Yes, we did.
And one of the good things that I noticed as I was tracking the activity online, there were persons who were forwarding the link.
Yes.
And we want to encourage our viewers, even after this discussion is finished, just forward the link to people, to your friends, your relatives, and let them see what's happening, let them cash in on the discussion. We as a Barbadian public have been a little deprived of extensive discussion relative to Republic. As I was watching the news, I realized that they were putting in glimpses of Barbados from 15 or 16, way back down there, and trying to traction the road to Republic, as they call it. So this is a very, very, very worthwhile discussion.
It is.
That we are happy to engage this evening. And this is just the second leg in a 4-leg race relative to our discussion, Barbados as a republic, a Christian perspective. And we want to keep that before our viewers. We are taking a Christian look at this charter that it has started with.
Right.
And we have
proposed charter.
The proposed charter, thank you. Yeah. Next week we continue on the following week. Next week we'll be bringing in a sociologist, Dr. Veronica Evelyn, and another attorney at law. But with us this evening is a very special guest that I'm going to allow Pastor Sue to tell you about a little later. So Pastor Sue, over to you.
Yeah, we just want to welcome you. So as Bish mentioned, make sure that you go ahead and forward the link to somebody who's watching now. So no less than 5 people, put it up on your Facebook page, forward it so that people know that we are here and we've started. So let's just open in prayer. We want to welcome you to our discussions this evening, and we trust that your eyes are open to some things, that we're more aware in terms of our prayer lives, what to focus on as we look at this country, and what the plans are as far as republicanism is concerned. So let's pray. Father, we thank you for your goodness and your mercy towards the children of men. We understand, dear God, that we're not only children of men, but we are your children. And therefore, we have experienced your favor and your grace and your mercies throughout this day and even throughout the entire week. And so as we gather to sit together to discuss this matter that relates to our nation, you've called us to be alert. You said that the sons of Issachar were alert. You said that the Bereans left and saw. They understood, the sons of Issachar understood the times, and the people of Berea, they continue to search the scriptures for truth. And therefore, God, we want both of those to rest on our hearts as we discuss this matter. We thank you for truth. We thank you for revelation. We thank you for insight. And we especially pray a blessing over Corey as he comes to share with us this evening. We thank you for every listener and every viewer. May their lives be blessed and encouraged by what we will share this evening. In Jesus' name, amen, and amen.
So Pastor, tell us a bit about our special guest this evening.
Yes, so I just want to share a little bit about Corey. Corey Beckles is a 33-year-old husband, father, attorney at law, apologist, and minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He holds a Bachelor of Laws degree and a diploma in theology. He is the pastor of the New Testament Church of God in Weston, St. James. On several occasions and in different environments, he has given a legal perspective on topics affecting the Barbadian society and the church. He is an avid writer. He's written letters to the editor in response to the sexual rights movement, and is the owner of an online blog, which is an online ministry devoted to teaching believers in Jesus Christ to live a Christian life filled with hope, faith, and love. He believes that there's a wealth of wisdom in the Bible, which societies and nations have not sought or embraced. His heart's desire is to see nations governed and led by one standard, the standard of righteousness. Wow, what a bio. So we want to welcome at this time Corey, who's going to be joining us in this discussion. Corey, welcome.
Good evening, Doctors Marlon and Suzette husband. Thank you very much for the introduction. It is great to be here, and I expect that we will have a wonderful time discussing the topic.
Yes. Great.
It is true. And Corey, you bring a pretty delicate balance, both from a legal perspective and also from a theological perspective, being a Bible school graduate yourself. And so we are extremely happy to have you here with us. And we know we are going to take an unbiased look at the proposed charter. And our discussion is really fractured around a Christian perspective of this charter. And so we want to begin by racking your brain a little bit this evening. And the first thing we would want to ask you is, how may this proposed charter be viewed in light of religious liberties?
Yes, so it is necessary for persons to read this charter. This charter, when you look at the language of this charter, you will see certain words that you will not find in our present constitution. Words like tolerance. Yes, we know about respect. We will find respect. We should respect our human rights. We should respect fundamental human rights. But it is this word called tolerance. And this word tolerance has been seen in courtrooms all throughout the world, Europe, America. How far does this word tolerance go legally?
Corey, before you go any further, do you want to read the particular paragraph in which this word is cited before we go any further, just for our viewers who may not have been on last week? Because we did read through all of the articles last week. So
all right.
Which in particular you're referencing?
All right, so I'm looking at, this is Article 2. Article 2. Under respect, under the heading respect, and it reads, we commit to resolve our conflicts in the spirit of tolerance, respect, and acceptance of the diversity found amongst persons and within institutions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right. And that, when I read this charter, I found it very interesting. Very interesting. Now, this, we're talking about our religious liberties, and we know that we have the freedom to worship. We have the freedom to gather together, whether on Sunday, whatever day we choose to worship. We have that freedom. We have the freedom to, in private and in public, we have that freedom to declare what we believe from a religious perspective, from a conscience perspective. We can declare to the entire world that we are Christians. We can declare to the entire world that we believe in Jesus Christ. But this charter, it is very interesting that this charter speaks about we as a people, because the charter is saying that we as Barbadians accept this fact. That we desire to resolve our conflicts, taking into account tolerance, respect, and also diversity. So the tolerance and diversity, how will this affect our religious liberties? I just want to point persons to what has transpired in the United States of America, where we had a baker. He had a baker shop. This person had a baker shop, and we have this same-sex couple comes into the shop, and they want this baker to make a cake for their wedding, a wedding cake. And the baker refused. And because the baker refused, this couple took it upon themselves to go to the Anti-Discrimination Commission in Colorado, and they filed a complaint against this baker. And this baker was, since that time, since they filed that complaint, this baker was in legal matters within the court for about, I would say, several years. They had this baker before the Commission for Anti-Discrimination. They found that he discriminated against the same-sex couple. It went to the Court of Appeal in Colorado, and they found in favor of the same-sex couple. It is only when this baker went to the federal court, went to the U.S. Supreme Court, that the judges upheld religious liberty, and they said that this baker had the right to tell these persons, because of my religious belief, I cannot bake this cake for you. But we see that on the ground within Colorado, even the judges of the Supreme Court, they say that there was animosity, even within the judgment of the Anti-Discrimination Commission. There was some animosity, not towards the gentleman as a human being, but because he believed, because of his religious belief, this commission that is supposed to uphold to be fair and to be balanced, they did not see a man, they did not see the rights of this man against the rights of the same-sex couple. They saw a man that had a religious view, and because they did not like the religious view, they decided that they were going to rule against him. So the Supreme Court said plainly, no, we have to apply neutrality against persons' religious beliefs, because America, despite what may be happening in America concerning morality, America stands up for their constitutional rights. The court are very strict guardians. We use that term in our yes, we use that term, strict guardians of our heritage, but the courts in America are strict guardians of constitutional rights. But to get back to the charter, we are seeing these words, tolerance, we're talking about diversity. It may, based on what is contained in the charter, we may face a similar situation like that, or Christians in any sector of society, in business, may face a similar situation the same situation that baker faced in the United States, because this charter will be a legal document that can be interpreted in court, and any person can say, well,
let me ask a question. Yes. Seeing that we already have precedents where the Supreme Court held the baker's point of view, that is precedent for which we can reference even in the court of law here in Barbados, because it's a precedent that has already been established.
Right. So concerning precedents in jurisdictions outside of Barbados, we can refer to them, but they're not binding. So yes, we can refer to them, but the courts in Barbados do not have to even acknowledge them at all. They can refer to them.
But isn't that a little contradictory, because the society is moving in the direction and the trajectory of what the US does?
Right.
If as a culture, in the spirit of development, that we are embracing it from one end, how then can we discredit it from another end?
But that is a very important point, Bishop. Very important point, because even in Trinidad, the arguments that there was a case in Trinidad against the Buggery laws, and the judge in that case, he referenced what was happening in the international, what was happening concerning gender, what was concerning sexual orientation in the international arena. So he referenced that he was using terms that did not originate from Trinidad. It originated from international human rights treaties. But yet the law is telling us international law and how international law applies to our laws, to local laws. It tells us, and this is a legal principle, that these decisions are not binding. International decisions decisions from international courts are not binding on our local.
And again, I find it interesting because when the Governor General introduced the move toward same-sex unions,
correct,
reference was also made to U.S. practice.
Yes, so we have a situation where the philosophy within the laws of these other jurisdictions, America, Europe, what is happening in a Caribbean society or Caribbean legal, the legal framework, we are taking philosophies out of legal decisions in America, philosophies out of legal decisions before international human rights bodies. We are taking these and making them part of our legal doctrine, our legal framework, where even I believe, even as with this charter gives us a very good idea of what our new constitution will look like under a republic.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that while we may argue the point, I think fundamentally what we're seeing is convenience. Where it is convenient to apply a particular perspective, we will do that to further our cause. Because as I
Indeed.
was saying last week, the same thing about discrimination. So I could argue that you are discriminating against me. I could argue that you have an issue with my personal religious beliefs, and therefore you want me to bake a cake for you. But if I have rights and you have rights, I didn't tell you don't get married. I just told you I wasn't making a cake. But it's sometimes it's just a question of convenience and what fits the purpose. And that's why I agree with you that we have to be really careful in terms of being aware of what these things mean. And I think, as Professor Welch was saying last week, we really need to have explanation for these words. What do we mean when we say tolerance? Because are you tolerating my Christian beliefs?
Indeed.
Right? You're asking me to tolerate you, but are you tolerating me? And it goes both ways. And so I think that's a really important point that you shared there. So just carrying on from that.
But before you go on, Master, when you look at the same Article 2, and let me read it for the sake of the listeners. Everyone in Barbados has a duty to care for each other and to ensure that our relationships are at all times characterized by courtesy, civility, and mutual respect. That goes both ways.
Correct.
The second, you made reference to the first paragraph, but I'm going to cite the second paragraph. And
Yes.
interestingly enough, there's a very interesting word there. It says, we commit to resolve our conflicts in the spirit of, no, sorry, that's the first one.
Right.
We pledge to forge a more humane, listen to this word, and inclusive society. That's another word that we have to ask or beg explanation on.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, Bishop. And where did these words come from? Not any Barbadians. We know Barbadian society. And the Barbadian society, we are respectful people. We respect persons. We see persons. We pass persons on the street. Barbadians are very tolerant. What we call, let's use the word tolerant. Barbadians are very tolerant. The things that may happen in other countries concerning persons who may not look like us and behave like us, we see a totally different attitude. We see a totally different behavior from us as Barbadians. Barbados is a very respectful and tolerant country. So if you're going to put in a charter that this is what we need to do, when you're talking about inclusive, these are not words that come from the Barbados. These are not words that you would find in a Barbadian conversation. Correct. These are words that came from some other conversation. Mm-hmm. And what is happening, and we can see clearly that these paragraphs, even the same Article 2, these have been taken from some other source, not a Barbadian source. And
let us say borrowed.
yes, let's use that, borrowed. And now what is happening is that we are saying that we are going to take, are going to borrow, and this is who we are, and this is who we are going to become, right? So in my first, when I was reading this article, I'm thinking that there's no need to put this within a charter, that we have to resolve our conflicts, and there's certain things that we have to take into account to resolve our conflicts. This is something that I would see in bylaws for a company, for organization. We're talking about professional ethics. This is something that I would see in a professional ethics code. But you're going to place this in a legal document called a charter, and you're going to say all Barbadians, this is what all Barbadians believe. There's something very strange, because you are saying that this is a document that can be interpreted by the courts. And how are the courts going to interpret this word tolerance and respect and resolving conflicts? What are the conflicts that they're resolving? Because we have a criminal law that resolves physical conflicts. If a person has a conflict with someone else and they're injured, we have the criminal law, we have civil law that handles all of this. But if you're going to put this in the charter, you're basically saying there's a gap within Barbados or the Barbadian legal framework. We need to put this in because there is something missing from the Barbadian legal framework. There is something missing from Barbadian society. So we need to put this in this document so that we can protect the persons who are not protected under the current laws.
Yeah.
But equally, when I reread Article 2 again, everyone in Barbados has a duty to care for each other and to ensure that our relationships are at all times characterized by courtesy, civility, and here's another word, mutual respect. So
Yes.
mutual cannot only flow in one direction.
Correct.
Mutual has to flow in both directions. So in as much as others may have rights, Christians, the religious in our society, also have rights. And that's one of the things we need to constantly bear in mind and remind ourselves.
Indeed, Bishop.
Yeah. So moving on to another question then, Corey, as we continue to look at the charter itself, what are your views as in terms of it posing, I guess, from a legal perspective? So we know we talked about the cake, right? So
Yes.
the charter itself, from a legal perspective, what would you say are some of the advantages or threats for the Christian church?
All right, so let me start with the advantages first. As Bishop Marlon said, it still references religion, it references respect for the human rights, even in Article 1. It still covers religion, it still covers Christianity, it covers our conscience, our religious conscience. So it still protects us. It still protects Christian worship, the Christian expression of their faith. That is still protected. But the disadvantage is that now you have introduced some other variables into this whole fundamental human rights and human rights framework. Sexual orientation.
I think Korea would want to say even into our culture and societal practices.
Exactly. And the law, yes, we have the law, but law is influenced by culture. Culture influences our laws.
Right. So these are the things that will begin to shape Barbados.
Yes. And following on from that, the disadvantage is that you are basically placing in our constitution, our religious freedom is guaranteed by the freedom of conscience, and we also look at the term creed. So no law should prevent us from having our own creed, our own belief, and expressing that belief. But now you have placed the terms gender, sexual orientation. Since you have added in these terms, and when you look into even in Barbados, gender studies, there are colleges who are still studying what gender means. There is no set definition really for sexual orientation. Persons are saying that there's something called gender fluidity. So you're bringing some terms into the law that are really not yet settled. Not settled from a sociological standpoint, neither from a legal standpoint. And you're telling Barbadians that this should be part of our fundamental human rights framework. And when you come into the courtroom, the judge now is trying to interpret what does gender mean, what does sexual orientation mean. So the real disadvantage is that we may come to a place where gender, the interpretation of gender and the interpretation of sexual orientation trumps the Christian's right to speak. The Bible, there's certain things in the Bible, some of us know the verses, Leviticus, that speaks to certain behavior, certain sexual behavior, same-sex behavior. These biblical verses are very specific. So the disadvantage is we may come to a place where, and it has happened in other countries, where our preaching of Leviticus, our preaching in Romans, concerning Romans chapter 1, and be saying specifically that same-sex marriage is wrong and same-sex sexual relationships are wrong, that can be classified as hate speech. It can be classified as discrimination. It all comes down to how far the courts are willing to go to protect the terms gender and protect sexual orientation and protect the rights of persons who are who prefer same-sex relationships. How far are they willing to go? I spoke about the Beckles versus Colorado, the state of Colorado. How far are the courts willing to go to protect religious freedom of expression, the freedom for us to preach from wherever we want to preach from, the freedom to preach not just within the physical space of the four walls of the building, but also to go out in the open air and preach the same thing. How far are courts willing to go? And this is the issue. This is really the disadvantage that may come, because it has happened in other countries.
So when the church require of government an answer relative to explaining what these terminologies really mean and the implications they have for the way we know church to operate in Barbados.
Yes, the church should indeed ask the government, what do you mean by this? But I will tell you another point concerning law in Barbados. Parliament has the responsibility of making the laws, but the court has the responsibility of interpreting the laws that Parliament makes. So Parliament can say, well, we made it. We will leave it up to the courts to decide to interpret what sexual orientation and gender means. So Parliament government can decide, well, we have placed it there. The reasons why we have placed it there is that this is how society goes. But concerning the interpretation, they can say very plainly, well, we would allow the courts to decide what these words.
But is that bordering on cowardice? Isn't it a slippery slope for one institution to say A, B, C, D, and then leave it within the powers of another institution to say this is what A, B, C, D means? That sounds like a slippery slope.
Well, it is, and we are talking about a government that, not a government, we are talking about a document that we are saying this is what Barbadians hope to achieve. This is what Barbados stands for. This is what Barbadians desire for themselves and for their country. And if you are going to present this document to Barbadians, you have to present a document that is not ambiguous. You have to present a document that all Barbadians can understand. The terms and the language that you use in this document, all Barbadians must be able to understand exactly what is meant by these terms and by these words that have been used in the document. And we have a situation where that is not entirely so.
But does the Parliament have a responsibility to say very clearly what laws they need to pass?
Yeah, they do have responsibility. And sometimes Parliament is guided, yes, by the public. They're guided by political considerations, economic considerations. But in relation to legal drafting and drafting a document that is so important, this document basically tells Barbados, other than the Constitution that will come, this document is telling the entire world, telling us and the entire world, this is who we are. So Parliament does have that responsibility to present a document that reflects exactly who Barbados is, what Barbados hopes to achieve. And if you're going to use certain language, the persons who are making this decision, in this case, Parliament, we have the House of Assembly, we have Senate. These are things that should be, even before the law is passed, should be debated. We can't be glossing over, politicians just can't be glossing over the term sexual orientation and gender and debating, and in their debate, they just can't be glossing over these words and just talking about the charter itself. They just can't be ignoring these things, because the Barbadian public needs to know exactly what is Parliament's intention. But before we continue,
yeah, and to me that's exactly what it feels like. Sorry to interrupt you, but it feels that way, because to me, I kept saying to myself, but this thing is happening. The time is rolling. November is around the corner, and you're not getting the level of depth of discussion and awareness that something as major as this that is happening, that we should, for a country that is changing, well, if you want to say it's on a given trajectory, but these are major changes that are happening. And I think that what you're saying is very true. Nobody's talked. COVID has come and taken our attention away from this. And so we've had so many press conferences on the numbers of COVID and all of that, but I'm yet to see the same level of transparency and conversation regarding this whole matter. That is the truth.
Indeed, and if we can look to last year, the Employment Prevention of Discrimination bill, which was passed, so it's now an act of the Parliament, is no law in Barbados. These same terms, sexual orientation and gender, was placed within the law. No one seemed to. It's almost as if Parliament believes that all Barbadians already know what these terms are and how they should affect our lives.
But Corey, that positions us for another question for you. How does being a republic position us differently as a nation for the better? In examining the transition to the republic, I see no real. The only advantage I see to transition to a republic is that, yes, we no longer have the Queen as the head of state. We now have our own Barbadian. We have our own national person as the head of state. So there's certain Barbadian or pride. Let me say pride, because our motto is pride and industry. So there's a certain pride, certain aspects of pride that comes with the transition to being a republic. But concerning our position on the international stage, there's no difference. Recently, our prime minister has been very active on the international stage. So there really be no difference other than on the place card. When she goes to those international events, the place card may have Republic, Barbados as Republic, or it may refer to Barbados as a republic, but it really does not change how the international body community sees us. It doesn't change how we relate to other countries. It really changes how we may relate to England, to United Kingdom, because we're now saying, yeah, go ahead. But there was something that was going through my mind relative to we being colonized by Britain and so on. Didn't that place us, suppose Barbados was to be attacked,
right,
would being in an alliance with Britain enable, without even much coercion, Britain coming in and helping to defend and aid us?
Yes, it certainly makes it much easier to communicate with England, communicate with United Kingdom, and ask for aid. However, what Barbados can do as a republic, they can enter into a treaty with the United Kingdom that covers those areas. So what will happen is that there may be no automatic yes.
Right.
Automatic yes to any assistance from the UK. Is that now Barbados as a republic may now have to enter into some further diplomatic relations with United Kingdom. So we just can't now rely on what is contained in the Constitution. We can't rely on the Queen being our head of state to just come in and have some easy diplomatic conversations with UK. We now have to put certain measures in place to make sure that we maintain that relationship, even though we're now a republic.
And of course, we don't have any public knowledge of how the transition went with the Queen, the feelings of the Queen toward the decision or anything like that. So we really can't speak to it, but we can certainly hint to it. But we don't want to explore it.
Right. Yes, and yes, this is also a legal issues. We gain independence through an act of the UK Parliament. The UK Parliament, they are the body that decided that or agreed for us to have independence. So there are certain legal issues that have resulted because of this transition. But I'm hoping that there is no residual animosity from between UK and Barbados because of the transition.
So speaking of transition, in terms of the sequence, so what would be the general or your general take on the sequence of the introduction of the charter to the Barbadian public?
All right, so we have a situation where we are not a republic. The Parliament of Barbados amended the constitution to appoint the president. We don't have a new constitution as yet. Yet we have this proposed document called a charter. Even before we have become a republic, even before we have established that new constitution. So it seems very strange that we have this charter. This charter has come into being even before those necessary. Yeah.
Korea is not the only professional that is making this statement. We have heard this statement repeatedly. We heard it even last week in our discussion. We heard it on the radio from the homes of political scientists, from callers into the radio program, and all those kind of things. So it's interesting.
Yeah, is it this proverbial cart, putting the cart before the horse? They can use that term. And as much as, yes, Parliament may have the best intentions, from a legal aspect, from a legal examination, things have to be done. The Bible uses the terms in decency and in order. Things have to be done in decency and in order, so that a person from the outside looking in.
And you're not saying indecently, you're saying indecency.
Yeah, indecency. In one word, and decency and in order. Yeah, so these are the things, and they're not. We can't just brush aside these issues. We can't brush aside the fact that the charter should not be coming before that new constitution. You should put a new constitution in place, and the republic should be in place first, and then you talk about this charter. But now you are basically. It seems that this charter is an introduction to what is coming. It's just an introduction to what is coming.
I am still looking here at the article number 2 under respect, the last paragraph, and it says, we shall seek to strengthen ties between Barbadians of all ages in order to enshrine the dignity and respect for one another. Listen to this one. We uphold the family as the key institution through which our present and future generations are and shall be nurtured. Talk to me about that one. We uphold as the key institution. We uphold the family as the key institution. How does this play out with the apparent legalization of common law? Same-sex unions.
Right, but they have already the Parliament has already declared their hand. in talking about using this term, the institution of the family, they have already declared that they are going to expand the definition of family. They have already placed within the document sexual orientation, and we know that can include persons of the same sex, lesbians, homosexuals. We know that that can include those persons. We know that the government has already set up their intentions to legalize some form of civil unions. We know their intentions. So based on the interpretation of what has happened before, examination of what has happened before, and what is placed within this document, the only logical conclusion that we can come to is that this family that they're referring to is not the family that Barbadians have held so dear for 55 years. This is the 55th year of independence. It is not the same family that we are accustomed to. This is a different, is an expanded definition of family that they're referring to.
Wow.
Also, you mentioned the first sentence about strengthening the ties of Barbadians of all ages. So that statement is so wide, so broad, it can be interpreted as meaning that we are going to educate our young people. We're going to educate persons in the primary school, nursery, secondary school, and we are going to educate them about diversity. We're going to educate them about the different people in society, the different philosophies in society, sexual orientation. I always come back to that term because it's very important. Gender studies. So that strengthening the ties mean that you are going to create a Barbados where people have to know about these things. They have to know about gender studies, know about sexual orientation, and everything that comes with it.
In that case, it would be a re-education, not an education.
Right, re-education. So, and this comes back now to parental, the rights of parents.
Exactly.
So even as you if you take that, then I mean, how far would it be able to go within the family context? So if a person, I don't want my child, for example, to be taught. When I was going to school many years ago, and there were certain people who never participated in prayers, and we just knew that. We knew that whether it was the Jehovah's Witnesses or the people of other beliefs, once there were prayers, they would stay on the outside, and we accepted that, as you said, but the society has been quite tolerant. What if parents start to say, well, look, I don't want my child being taught that. How is that going to play out in real life?
Right. It could be a legal battle, but the law as it is now, Barbadian parents, in the same way that Barbadian parents can inform the school, inform the principal, and let the principal know, well, we don't want our child being involved in morning worship or morning prayers and singing Christian songs. In that same way, we can extend that to any teaching that is against religious beliefs. So parents, as it is now, the parents can plainly tell a principal, I don't want my child being taught this. But the parent has the issue that can arise, that has arisen in other countries, is that sometimes the parent doesn't even know that their children are being taught this. We have health and family life education. There's certain things that in health and family life, on the health and family life curriculum, that the parents may not even know what is being taught at school. So we have a situation where parents must be informed. Parents must know beforehand what is on the syllabus. If they're going to teach this to my child, if they're going to teach health and family life education in light of this charter, in light of any proposed changes to the Constitution, the parents must know what is on the syllabus, what is on this curriculum, so that they can make the necessary objections.
And that is really now a quickening and awareness of parents, where before, as parents, we kind of left education to our teachers and we kind of played the second fiddle. Now we're more involved because they have to learn from at home because of the whole COVID situation. But it really calls parents to stand up now and recognize that we are the first educators. we're the first teachers, and so we have to take responsibility and not just send the children off to school and lead them to, to the teachers to teach. And that is a very important point there, Corey.
Yeah, another thing is that parents now have to search behind the student.
Indeed, yeah.
Search behind the child. Let me see what you learned today.
Yeah.
So it is going to call for a deliberateness on the parts of parents to really try and understand who their child, what adult their child is becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
And I think we as parents need to ask that question. What adult is my child becoming? And so because of the gates that are expanding, we need to really look at life differently, in my opinion.
indeed.
Corey, as we look to wrap up, we have a few more minutes. How do you think this proposed charter would add to the formulation of the new constitution? Does it set the precedents for it? Does it transcribe into the constitution? How does it work from a legal perspective?
Yes, I believe it clearly tells us or gives us an idea of what our new constitution will look like in relation to the fundamental rights and freedoms. It gives us that idea of within our constitution as it stands now. It refers to creed. It refers to, let me pull up Article 2.
Which is the Article 2 in the present constitution?
On the present charter, no, Article 1, sorry. So Article 1 says all Barbadians are born free and are equal in human dignity and rights regardless of age, race, ethnicity, faith, class, cultural and educational background, ability, sex, gender, and sexual orientation. So there's certain some of those terms are already within our constitution, but this charter gives us an idea of the broadening, the scope of these rights and the scope of the protections will be broadened to include these terms, gender and sexual orientation. Nothing is wrong with cultural and educational background and ability, but I am more, I believe that these terms, gender and sexual orientation, will be placed within our new constitution, will be part of the fundamental rights and freedom section in that new constitution. So now, I think, as I said before, we have a situation where gender rights concerning sexual orientation, the expression of a person's sexual orientation now will be placed on the same pedestal, on the same level as the expression of a person's faith. So now the courts now have to strike a balance between protecting a person's expression of their sexual identity and a person expressing their faith. So we're going to have those issues. But I believe that gives us a very idea that this is a precedent of how our constitution will look.
We have a comment, just going back to what we were talking about before. We have a comment online. Somebody says, parents will also need to be strong, because while the child will not be in the class, they may still mix with their friends and learn what was taught in school. And I think that is very true.
Indeed, and what is also necessary, teachers. We have a situation where teachers are influencers. Mm-hmm. No matter what subject you are teaching, the teacher has the authority and the ability to influence our children. And we may have situations where a teacher may believe they're not teaching, yes, they're teaching math or they're teaching English, but they have their own personal beliefs. And we may have situations where they teach their personal beliefs to the children, to the entire class. So what I believe should be done, yes, they may have a code of ethics in our schools, but the code of ethics really should be broadened in our schools, in our classrooms, so that teachers do not overstep their boundaries, and teach things to our children that really should not be taught, are focused on things that really they should not be focusing on, so that we have a situation where there is a structure, so that the parents, the teacher presents a syllabus to the parents, and the parents know exactly what is being taught. But there's within the classroom, anything can happen within that classroom. So there really should be a code of ethics. The code of ethics should be broadened so that teachers stick to what they're teaching, so that we don't have a situation where my children, their children come home to their parents and tell the parents, teacher, this is what I learned in math class or English class, and the parents are surprised. Surprised at what is happening. So there has to be, if this is where Barbados is going, we have to set boundaries.
Correct.
In our schools. We have to set boundaries. Even in we have cadets, Girl Guides, Cub Scouts. We have to set boundaries.
Correct.
Have to set boundaries.
You know, somebody else is sharing. They said, you know we need to teach our children the Word of God. No more than ever, so that at least they have some form of a buffer to be able to counteract what's being said. So they're having some good interaction online as well, coming from some of our viewers. And I think that's also a very important point. We now have to do that in indoctrination, and I say it without apology, in our children, so that at least they know, they have something that says when they see it different, something sends a message. Okay,
Yes.
you know, this signal don't look quite right. Let me ask a question. And because we have already given them the foundation that they need to have to go on, we're down to perhaps our last comment. There are two more parts of that particular article. One that speaks to equitable development, and there's a focus there on further education and giving of time and resources. And but whenever you see the word equitable, you have to kind of look at it and make sure that there's a more than a pestle. But I think those other two, then the other one speaks to social partnership.
Correct.
Contribution of workers and employment and the government and stuff like that. I know in recent times when we talk of social partnership, we've also included the church. And certainly we would be expecting that continues, so that the church continues to have a voice. This one, I was trying to see if it actually referred to the church. It talked about workers, employment and government, and of the Social Justice Committee to the Stability and Good Governance of Barbados, and that they're going to strengthen and expand this form of social consensus as an instrument of policy. But I didn't see the word church in there. And I just wondering, since in recent times we've included,
I don't know if we've included the church in the social partnership. What they have done is created something called the third sector. And the church finds its voice within the third sector. I am one that agitates for the church being a part of the social partnership, because the church deals with fallout in people's psychological awareness, people's psychological health, mental health, all these kind of things. And so in terms of the building of faith and spirit, in terms of bouncing back with courage and faith, so I am an activist for the church being a part of the social partnership and the church being an essential service.
What you have said, Bishop Marlon, it is relevant and it is important. If we are talking about a document that truly represents Barbados, the church has been a part of Barbadian society for several years. The church has been here. Even before independence, the church has been influencing Barbadian society before independence.
But it was the church. The church was before government started to take over schools. The church owned the schools.
Yes, exactly. So the church has aided, has contributed to the development of Barbadian society in several different areas. And sometimes even in more ways than the government. The church started social development, aided children in going to school. Parents that did not have enough resources to send their children to school, the church was there to help. Church baptized, christened all of these are activities that Barbadians are accustomed to, that Barbadians have experienced. So to bring a document, this proposed charter, and is really totally ignoring the contribution that the church has made, and it shows us how the church is viewed. We're just seen as just another religious body. We are seen as just another organization, another body that should keep in their own corner, and that is fine. But I totally agree with your comments, Bishop Marlon. The church should have a voice and should be able to have some say in policy. The church should be able to have some say in this charter. There have to be some element, some area within this charter that the church has a meaningful contribution to make.
And putting the church with the third sector. I mean, could here you go first, you go second, and church come third. It's a little embarrassing.
All right, and I'm going to say, I'm going to say something that that may be a bit controversial, but some of these philosophies that are coming from America and Europe, these are steeped in an antichrist, again, a bit biblical antichrist philosophies.
Yes.
But also
Anti-God philosophies. So you are going to put these anti-God philosophies within this Barbadian charter, and it totally ignore the church that has, in reality, been here for Barbadians, in reality, contributed to the economy of Barbados, in reality, contributed to the development of Barbadian homes and Barbadian families, children, adults. You're totally going to ignore that contribution. Something is wrong.
but life too, because church gives social lift to people.
Yeah.
It gives social lift to people who have fallouts from school that the church has taken under their wings and pull right back up and give them social standing.
Right, indeed. Whenever there's and recently, whenever there's some issue in Barbados, they call for a day of prayer. They call for the involvement of the church. So are we just here to just when the need arises?
It's actually quite interesting. I'm following some of the comments online. That's why I'm kind of looking, because people are participating. So just to share a couple of those comments, and then we'll wrap up. You know, someone said, Christians, wake up. This did not just begin. It began with the teaching of moral values without the word of God in our schools. And that was shared by Jasmine. And then someone replied, Carol replied to her, Carolyn, and said, my son was taught about idols and Muslims and different religions and religious education. And because of his teaching at home, he questioned it and said that his mom taught him that statues are dead and God is living. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Great job, Carolyn.
And
Great job.
that is a very, very, very poignant
Yes.
statement from which we can really conclude our discussion.
Yes.
So it shows that the standards that believers set in their homes for their children are going to speak much louder than whatever they gain from the outside.
Yes.
Indeed.
So we have to constantly be cleansing brains and that kind of stuff, and putting things in perspective. And it also argues that believers must become knowledgeable as to the word of God and what God expects for their life.
Correct. And to add to that, we still need to say, and to remember that we still have, as someone mentioned, as a method of, as a means by which we can see change happen, we still have the power of prayer. And we can still use that weapon in terms of defending our country and fighting for what we believe. So, any final words from you, Corby, before we close off? Your last going home statement. What do you want to say to us?
Just that, do not allow the changes, don't allow these proposed changes or the changes that will be made, don't allow these to sway us away or lead us away from the truth of the gospel. We should be willing to still stand for what we believe in, even if our government and parliament, even if our legal documents are saying something totally different. We have the right to stand firm and declare in private and in public what we believe. So I encourage persons to continue to do that. No matter what happens, continue to exercise your religious freedom. And just allow me just 1 minute. We have religious freedoms from the Constitution, from the laws of this land, but God tells us plainly, when there's a conflict, when the laws there may be a conflict between the laws and of the expression of our faith, we have to obey God rather than man.
That's right.
So we have the spiritual right, and we have a legal right, both sides. So if the legal right is taken away, we have a spiritual right from God Himself.
Amen.
Corey, thank you so very
Thank
much
you.
for your loaded contribution.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I have thoroughly enjoyed your perspective, both Christian and legal.
Yeah.
You have added significant value to the course of this discussion, and we are only at the second part.
Yes.
Pastor Sue, we look forward to the third part
Yes,
next
we
week.
do.
And then the fourth part next week, we'll be having a sociologist,
Yes.
Dr. Veronica Evelyn, and another lawyer, Nikki Jamin, joining us in our discussion as we look at the remaining two articles, Articles 3 and Articles 4. My. And we want to thank our viewers. We want to thank you for your contributions,
Thank you
for your typing your questions, typing your statements. You know, we that's what makes this program so valuable, because we are not only hearing from the professionals, from the experts, but we're also hearing from those experts who are viewing online. I am so sorry that we have to bring this discussion to an end this evening, Pastor Sue.
Yes.
I am totally satisfied with the information that we would have gathered this evening.
So thank you so much, Corey. I just want to share some announcements now with you for the rest of us who are here, just to share those announcements. So coming up tomorrow, we have our sanctuary half hour at 8 o'clock. We continue to pray about the COVID impact, and so we encourage you to join us at 8 p.m. Then we have access moments. Those have been coming out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. Again, this is an opportunity to share. All you have to do is simply click on whatever it is and hit share. It doesn't cost you anything except a willingness. And this is a way that we help to share the gospel of Christ. So we encourage you to be forwarding the information that you receive. Our summit, the next summit, which is for the ladies, all the ladies out there by now should have registered for the next summit. It's coming up on Friday night. We start at 7 o'clock, and on Saturday evening, we start at 6 p.m. It's a virtual leadership summit for women. And the thing about it is, I just want to say to some of you who may be saying, I'm not going to get home in time to see most of it, or I'm going to get home late and I'm going to miss part of it, and therefore I don't want to bother to sign up. I want to say to you that you're going to have access to the presentations for 72 hours after the conference. So even if you miss some of it, you can always go back. The link will allow you to access it for 72 hours. So don't let the fact that you're going to get home late on Saturday or you're going to miss Friday stop you from signing up. You will have access. Coming up on Sunday morning at 8:15, we have Kingdom Adventures via Zoom, and at 10 o'clock, we're in the house. We're still in the house. And so we want to encourage you to come and be a part. Call the office and book your spots. That's going to be at 10 o'clock in-house and online. At 5 o'clock, Halal presents Fuel to Flow. Really excited about this time. There's no admission fee, but we're encouraging you as you come, just bring an offering, a special donation. We still have, I think we may still have a few spaces left, so you can book by calling the office 431-0016 and be a part of that. And then coming up, SAFE is having their event, November the 26th, Picture Me at 7 p.m. via Zoom. So we have all of those announcements, and we just want to encourage you to bear those things in mind and make sure that you take advantage of all that's happening in your community and through your church. Just to let you know, if you want to give, you can still do so We have the option of doing so online, so our information is there. If you want to pour into the ministry, please feel free to do so. So you can do that via our bank account numbers, or you can pass by and you can drop your offering in our drop box at the back of the church. Or you can call someone and say, well, listen, I can't get out for whatever reason. Would you come? I still want to give. And we know that God is going to bless you and reward you for giving, because it's going to be added. Remember that sermon Bishop preached a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. It's going to be added to your account. It's going to be added to your account. So we want to bless you and release you. Bishop is going to declare a blessing over you as we say good night after this awesome session. And we'll see you again.
And I want to remind you of our corporate prayer meeting on Saturday morning.
Yes.
Pastor is at 7:30 in
7:30 in the morning.
We look
Yes.
forward to that. And we're having something called request time.
Correct.
So if you have a request, make sure you get it into Pastor Sue by tomorrow, Pastor.
By Friday midday.
Friday
midday.
Get your prayer requests in,
Yes.
and we will be sure to pray for it and with you in that prayer meeting on Saturday.
Can I give my number? Let me give my number so you can WhatsApp me at 233-2193. 233-2193. If you have a prayer request, please send it in, and we're going to be praying for you on Saturday.
And Pastor, we want to break this 35, 40, 45, 50 cycle when it comes to prayer meetings. We're always around the 40 number and so on. We have a church that's big enough. We should be having at least 100 people in our prayer meetings every quarter. We pray every quarter at 7:30 in the morning. And I'm appealing to sanctuarians to join the prayer meeting. Let us try to break that cycle of 40 people and really head to 100 people.
Amen.
So I'm going to ask those of you online to canvas your other colleagues and friends, church brothers and sisters, and say, listen, come on, man, we want you to join us in prayer. The bishop has put out a call.
Amen.
We want to have at least 100 people online this Saturday morning. I throw the challenge out in the name of the Lord.
Amen.
Let me raise my right hand. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. I declare that the Lord will lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
And
Amen.
amen.
God bless
God
you.
bless you.
God bless you.
And shalom.